Morning, guys. Welcome to, I think, our first breakfast event of this year. And so today we have with us Gautam Saraogi. He's the CEO of Go Colors. He has over 10 years of experience in garment manufacturing, sourcing, marketing, and brand building. Having a business background of garment export, Gautam started the company in 2010. And today they have over 630 stores that are owned by the company all over India. Go Colors started out with just two products, leggings and churidars. However, the brand has continued to expand its basket of products, and today they have over 50 products to offer in over 100 colors. Gautam has been a member of EO Chennai since the year 2017, and he's been very kind to come here and be with us with all the date changings and everything. But he's been very patient and very kind to be here with us. Gautam. I'd like Amitai to felicitate Gautam. I would like to call Anuja Jain to take over the proceedings.
Very good morning to you, Mr. Gautam. First of all, on behalf of the entire EO Northeast chapter, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. And it's a privilege and a big honor for me to be conducting this session with you. And before I really start with the session, I just wanted to put this thing out there. Personally, it's just my observation, the layout of the Go Colors store, like the way all the different products are like stacked perfectly and the burst of colors that are there, it's like a perfect eye candy for any female out there. You cannot stop yourself from going in. So I just want to put it out there, I really like the layout, so just a compliment for you. And without further ado, let's jump into the questions. Starting with the PE funding. So what are some of the key factors that businesses need to consider when deciding whether to pursue private equity funding or maybe go by the debt route instead? What do you look for?
See, I think one of the key factors is what are the growth rates? So I think one of the key factors is what are the growth rates in the business. If you feel that you're going to be having a compounding growth of CAGR of more than 30% over 10 years and that kind of runway for growth to build the business is there, then PE funding makes sense. If it's a family-owned business and the aspiration is just to fill working capital and not look at growth, then I don't think PE funding is the right way. Then I think debt would be a better instrument compared to PE funding. So the real aspirations of the entrepreneur and the family business comes into the picture whether you want to take it from a 50 crore business to a 500 crore business. And that's when the real question of wanting PE money arises.
So if I have to put it concisely, it's growth. If you're growth oriented, if you see yourself doubling up or tripling up in the coming decade or so, maybe PE funding might be the better route than that. Got it. Now, say a business does find out that it is on the right track for growth, how can it prepare for PE funding? Like how does one get investor ready per se?
So I think the first basis is making up your mind that you want to raise PE money, because raising PE money is very complicated and very difficult. So the day you decide you want to raise PE money, it takes probably a year and a half before you can actually get the money. The second important thing is that most family businesses in India are not financially well structured. So I think with a PE funding investor coming in, you have to really structure your financial reporting, get a CFO in place, get a financial model in place, information model in place, appoint an investment banker. So those are the things family businesses have to do before actually going out to the market to raise money.
And roughly how long is this exercise? Like once you think maybe you're ready with like getting CFO, getting your financial things streamlined?
Anything from a year to year and a half, it takes. So it's a long process.
It's a long process.
It's a long process.
And I mean, for Go Colors especially, it's been roughly like what 10, 11 years and you've expanded like anything. So was it the same amount of time or from the get-go you knew this is where you will be going?
I mean, to think of it, we did nothing of those things when we raised our first round. So we raised our first round in 2014. We raised about $10 million. We didn't have a CFO. Our financial reporting was very poor. The kind of investor we got in was a very financially structured investor. So I think we turned out to be lucky. We were able to raise, and with time we were able to structure ourselves. But if I have to share my wisdom, I would do a lot of things before raising the first round.
Okay, understood. And as far as building trust with the investor is concerned, say what you have gotten the funds, any specific things that you would do to make sure the investor trusts and the relation remains healthy between the two?
See, I think the most important thing with an investor is clarity. And I think first it starts with what kind of investor you want on board. See, I've dealt with two very different type of investors before we went public. So Sequoia was a very different investor. ICICI Venture was a completely different type of investor. So I think first you have to also be prepared to what kind of investor you want. Do you want an investor who's going to be part of your strategic operations, or you just want a financial investor who sits on your board? I think that clarity in your own mind of what kind of investor is required. Because it's more like a marriage, right? And when you have someone on board, you have to deal with that person for at least 4-5 years. So the type of investor and once you get the investor, it is 100% clarity you work with the investor. See, we've seen, right, there have been many issues around Go mechanics where there was a very big disconnect between the investors on board versus the execution team.
Exactly.
So it's always better to under-promise and over-deliver rather than the other way around.
Very well put. And any common myths around PE funding per se, like the conception in the market is something, but actually when you go into it, it's like a different flavor. Anything like that stood out for you?
There are no myths. It's a lot worse than people think.
Okay.
So I tell every entrepreneur, if working capital is not a concern, don't raise PE funding.
Okay.
So I mean, look, your business is your business. So
Yeah.
if you're able to build it on your own capital and debt as long as possible, just run it like that.
Just running, right?
Yeah.
That's a big takeaway, I would say. I mean, really.
I mean,
think
PE funding is vanity for the first 3-4 months, but then reality kicks in very fast.
Also, like some of the companies who raise PE funds or maybe like venture capital funds, some companies having issues of burning cash out quite quickly. So, any metrics or any route plan that you, or maybe any checks and balances in place that you use to make sure that you don't burn out the cash?
See, first the entrepreneur has to treat that money as not their own money.
Right.
The reality is most funded businesses, the entrepreneur thinks that it's their money, and that's when the responsibility goes away. So when we raised money from Sequoia, we raised money from ICICI Venture, we treated it as external money. We didn't treat it as our money. So the responsibility of when you're spending every dollar has to be from day one. So in our business, we never spent too much on advertising. We spent our working capital entirely on building distribution and sales and infrastructure. Some tech companies, some companies out there do the other way around, they spend more money on advertising. I'm not saying spending on advertising is bad, there has to be a fine balance. Some companies just go the other way.
As far as Go Colors IPO, it launched its IPO in November 2021. That was after 2 rounds of PE funding that we just mentioned. So what were the signs that made you feel that you were ready for the IPO and not maybe another round of PE person?
See, the real question to be answered when you're going for an IPO is whether your business is generating free cash. If your business is not generating free cash and the business cannot sustain itself, you should never go public. Because profitability is one aspect, but is that profitability converting into free cash from your business? So I think the readiness for knowing whether your business is ready for IPO or not is the free cash what you generate in a business. And another thing with the PE is, so why does a company go IPO? So one of the reasons for a company going IPO is because you want to give exit to your PE investors. If I'm bringing in another PE investor, I'm making things more difficult for me. Because till you're having a PE investor in your company, the company is not yours. The PE investor has preferential rights to everything in the company. Your valuation is only on paper.
Yeah.
So you're actually unlocking your wealth when you're going public. So to answer it in a short way, I think the real question is the business should be generating enough free cash for the company to think about going public.
Well put. One of the primary criteria is basically free cash generation, and that's the
So there's a very good saying we have internally. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is reality.
That's very well put. I think that can be a very good catchphrase. Okay, moving on, timing the market. Often the biggest obstacle that companies face when going public as IPO is that IPO activity can fluctuate a lot based on the global events. And what was your experience and your opinion about this?
See, I think, look, if you're a good story and if you're a good business, you can go IPO anytime. I think the real question would be on the valuation perspective. Maybe in a good market you'll get a few bits higher. Maybe in a slow market you'll get a little slower. But whether a company can go IPO, if it's a good story and if investors like it, you can go IPO at any point. The deciding factor is only the valuation.
I just want to drill a little further there. So, say you have a good story, but maybe the markets are not right. Would you opt to wait for a couple of years until the cycle returns, or would you just go out and?
It depends on the valuation of the thing.
Okay.
So if the promoters and the investors think that the valuation on the table by the public markets is fair, and then why not? So it depends on the valuation of the thing.
And how do you determine the right size for your IPO? Like what revenue benchmark should one look at?
See, I think usually to get interest from the larger funds across the world and India, at least it should be 1,000 crore IPO. 800 to 1,000 crore IPO is a decent enough size of IPO to attract even the larger players. Because for the larger funds who are globally and even the bigger mutual funds, they would want to do a particular allocation.
Right.
So a very small IPO, you probably miss out on the larger funds.
Larger funds.
So 800 to 1,000 crore IPO, a combination of secondary and primary should be ideal.
Yeah, and generally you see that the institutional investors are the ones who tend to be the long-term investors. That's where you would want your company shares to be going. And how do you decide the float size? I know the 10% is the minimum that you need to have it out there, but at the get-go, would you want to start right at 10 only, or would you want to have a little more?
See, it all depends on how much the promoters and investors want to sell of their own secondary shares, and what is the requirement of capital of fresh issue inside the company. So I think that's what actually decides, because for any company to go IPO, when they're doing the primary round, they should do enough so that they don't need capital for the next 10 years.
Okay.
So on that basis, the calculation arrives. And how much the investors want to sell.
Makes sense. And how do you find the right board members, especially independent board members? And I'm speaking more from the context of, say, multi-generational family businesses considering an IPO per se. So bringing in independent members sitting on your board, how do you find right members? And secondly, how do things go well from there? Because it's going to be a big cultural shift for the company and the board as well.
See, I think look, the minute a company is thinking about raising PE, or even when they're going public, the board plays a very critical role. And the first requirement for any company like that is that you need to have a very professional board. So when you go public, you will also have to get independent directors. So the way we did was we have 3 to 4 independent directors, and we selected sectors from where we want. So we had one from the corporate governance / banking sector. We had one from the real estate sector because our stores are located, so there's a real estate element to it. And one we got from the textile sector. So we got 3 very credible independent directors who add a lot of value to the board and to the strategy of the business. So any entrepreneur needs to first understand the metrics of the business and then decide where do I need to get the external advice from. And then from that sector they can select the right independent director.
So basically something that complements well your business, so different
Exactly.
aspect of a business, and maybe pick from those areas which will
Exactly.
create good synergy.
But for any company which is going PE funding, it's very important to professionalize the board. Because once you take VC or PE money, the company has to operate in a very different way. It cannot run the way it used to run as a family business.
Yeah, this is a big shift.
There's a very big shift.
So, I mean, can you say that like going PE was the first step and going public was the second, or it's more or less the same in both the
See, I'll tell you, PE is a very good filter before you go public.
So maybe a exercise. just
So
to give you
because
flavor.
there are many things which a PE investor will streamline for you in your company before you step into the grounds of IPO. So I think having a PE before an IPO is not a bad thing.
It's a
from that perspective.
stepping stone from that
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
Okay. And when it comes to going public, how important is the role of a CFO versus a CEO? And especially as a founder CEO, what exactly are you looking for in your CFO?
It's a very tricky question, but so CFO is a must, and it goes without saying.
Yeah.
But the important thing of getting a CFO, you don't need a chartered accountant. You need a chartered accountant who can look at the balance sheet and do it from a CFA's perspective.
Okay.
So I think selecting the right CFO from that perspective is very important. So I'll give you an example. In our Marwadis, the way Marwadis look at books and accounts, a regular chartered accountant will not be able to look at it.
Right.
So I think a combination of an entrepreneur and a chartered accountant in a CFO is what a founder CEO should look at. Because, so the reason why I'm saying that is, you're going to be talking to 100 investors in the roadshow. Explaining the business, the numbers in a entrepreneur way is what the CFO has to do. And that not every CFO has that capability.
That particular skill which will complement.
That is the most important.
Very good. And when you are considering an IPO, what company metrics are you focusing on when you're preparing for one?
See, the most important things is what is your CAGR, what are your growth rates which is going to happen over 6-7 years, because how big is your market, how fast are you going to grow, because for any institutional investor, if they are going to see a prospective investment, they are going to see that, okay, if I'm going to be putting my money in today, it will probably double in X number of years. So growth rates of how fast you're going to grow, that is a very, very important metric. And margins of the business. The business has to be profitable. See, a lot of digital PE funded companies without profitability keep growing. IPO does not work like that. You need to be a profitable, cash generating business. All your measures of revenue, profitability and cash flow has to tick before you go to an IPO. So first is future growth rates. Second are hygiene businesses, margins. Yeah.
And things like earnings per share and everything, they come to picture much later, or are you like looking at them even before you go public? Like how much will you be?
No, look, earning per share is a much later questions. I think first is you prepare your, there's something called a DRHP.
DRHP, yeah.
So you first prepare the Bible of your business, and then you take things forward. The earning per share is a much later one. You shouldn't even bother in the starting part of the IPO.
Okay. Pricing of an IPO. So when Go Colors went public, which was November 2021, we were just getting out of COVID, and the most recent financial numbers were not really the complete picture, were not really the right picture. In such a situation, how did you find the right price for your IPO? And is it more like an art or a science? Like,
See, I think not talking specifically about Go Colors, I think any entrepreneur who's taking their company public needs to keep something on the table for the incoming investor. I think being very valuation greedy is not the right thing. And when you're having PE investors, a PE investor would want to look at the highest valuation because he's going to be exiting.
Exactly.
But you're going to be running the company for any number of years. So how do you strike the right balance? How do you not undervalue the business and overvalue the business?
Exactly.
So there has to be fair valuation because your business needs that deserve the fair valuation. At the same time, you need to keep something on the table so that an incoming investor who's trusting you with their money also earns. So you have to find the right balance between undervaluing and overvaluing.
I mean, so if you look at one of the recent Paytm IPO, it went really bad because I think it was way overvalued. But was there, in general, is there any role of the initial PE funds that invest in you which push you in that direction of overvaluation, or not really? It's more.
See, I can't comment on Paytm, but I can tell you one thing that I think many other companies which have gone public, most of them are loss-making companies,
Right.
and I think the problem starts there.
Okay.
Because they get a certain multiple. When sustained losses continue, investors lose interest.
Okay.
So, for me, hard to point out what was the issue with the Paytm IPO.
Okay.
But in general, you need to be a profitable company, or you need to turn profitable at least within a defined period of time. Now, many of these other digital companies which have gone public, I don't know when they're going to turn profitable. That's a big question.
So not just looking at the growth prospect, but also having profitability.
That's the most important hygiene point.
Okay. So that's what most of the companies might invest on.
Yeah.
And when you are doing the valuation, like you generally consider forward P multiple while giving out a number. How forward do you look? 1 year, 2 year, or it's again?
In general, 1 year forward is the right way to go.
Okay. Moving on to brand building.
Right.
GoColor's expenditure on advertisement and marketing has been roughly in the range of 2 to 4%, which I think is lower as per industry standards. Do you see that changing in the years to come?
No, I think it's going to further reduce.
Further reduce.
Yeah, so because look, see, for us, our advertising is our own stores which we have on high streets and malls.
Okay.
And that physical presence of an outlet, that is our largest and biggest advertising medium, which is intangible.
Right.
So for us to materially spend anything over and above that, we don't need it.
Okay.
Whether we can afford or not is not the question. But why to waste money when you know it won't work? So for us, currently it's about 3%. As we go bigger in size, the absolute amount of advertising will still be the same. So as a percentage, it will keep coming down. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I mean, especially looking at the apparel industry, I think a lot of focus for a lot of companies is on advertising, and this you're coming from a very different take on that. So that's very interesting to know. And other than your physical presence, what are your other brand building measures? And also, how do you measure the success through your brand building strategies? I mean, is there any way you identify, okay, maybe this is working, maybe this is not?
First, any business, if you're a branded consumer-facing business, you need to first understand why is the consumer coming back to you. If today you have sales, what is the reason of the sales? So in our case, the reason is two things: quality and pricing. So we've understood that the customer is coming back to us because we are giving very high quality at reasonable pricing. So I think one of the fundamentals of growing a brand is what is your brand standing for. I think that has to come first out of the picture. So for us, we had identified that. So apart from our EBOs, which is a brand building advertising medium itself, concentrating on the product ethos of having good quality and reasonable pricing, that ethos to continue even the newer products what we're launching is something which plays a very big role in brand.
That's very interesting. I mean, a totally different take, at least for me, as far as brand building is concerned. And one more thing, your opinion on digital marketing. How much does it contribute to brand building in an apparel industry, and where do you see yourself spending more on digital marketing going forward?
See, look, I'm not a big fan of digital marketing. I think it's a black hole. You keep pumping in money. Now, whether it will give the benefits of revenue or not, it's $1 million question. But having said that, I still do a lot of digital advertising. So there are two types of digital advertising. There is a top of the funnel brand building digital advertising, and there is a bottom of the funnel performance driven digital advertising.
Okay.
The problem is most brands are spending heavy on performance, which is basically revenue linked. And the minute if you're doing performance and you turn off the lever of performance advertising, your revenue falls.
Okay.
And that I'm not a big fan of. Because that is where most brands, most companies lose money. So I'll explain what is performance. Performance brand building is you have a product, you put it on Insta, you put it on Facebook, or put it on YouTube saying that this is the product, 20% discount, visit the website. You're triggering a specific sale by giving out that discount. And the minute you undo that discount, your sales starts falling. So what works in the digital world is brand building, where you're not triggering a sale, you're just putting the concept of a brand in the minds of the customer, and the customer will eventually buy whenever she wants to buy. I think that's what works the best.
That's really well put. I mean, currently, if you see current scenario, most of the online sales are more
Performance driven.
Yeah, discount oriented.
Discount oriented rather than being the other.
Very true, very true. A very interesting thing there as well. Moving on to offline versus e-commerce sales. So currently, as I said, like online retailers in India mostly rely on discounting, and that's how they generate sales. Do you see this trend changing in the near future, or maybe in the near thing?
See, it's very unfortunate, but the larger marketplaces have spoiled the business already. And I'll tell you why. So they have positioned the entire e-com business around this. Today you go to any of the marketplaces, you will see the homepage only full of discounts. So the way they positioned it, unfortunately, e-com has become a wholesale market and it's not a retail market. So in the current scenario, offline is definitely a lot superior than online, but look, times will change. So over the next 5 years, if the positioning starts moving from discount to full price retail selling, online is slowly starts to move. But in today's scenario, the marketplaces have spoiled it for everyone by heavy discount.
I mean, I also want to relate this to Go Colors. I mean, currently 74% of Go Colors sales roughly come from your EBOs, which are exclusive brand outlets, your own cell phone stores. And share of online sales is roughly 2 to 3%, if I'm not wrong. So, is this because Go Colors go by a fixed price strategy? You wouldn't find discount online or maybe different price on
Very, very
store?
rightly you said. The problem is online, there's no concept of MRP in the online world.
Exactly.
Whereas in the offline world is completely driven by MRP. See, we are a full price sales brand.
Right.
More than 95% of our sales comes on full price. And that's one of the reasons why we are profitable.
Right.
Today, for a Go Colors, online is always going to be a very small channel. So maybe say 5 years down the line, our own stores would contribute to about 85% of the business and online would be at about 7-8%.
Okay.
But at no point of time in the life history of Go Colors, online is going to become a 25% channel. That's not going to happen.
It's because you're not using discounting and you don't have any
As a
cost.
medium. Correct.
Okay. And since your EBOs are opened more in a cluster format, how is it that it is not cannibalizing the sales of your existing stores, and how do you maintain consistent growth in the same store sales?
See, so the underlying demand is way higher than the supply. So today, when we are opening more number of stores in the same cluster, some stores do not really cannibalize, they slow down and grow. But the additional sales what I'm adding is way higher.
Okay.
So when the underlying demand is higher than the supply, you need to create supply. And if you want to create supply, it has to be in a cluster-based expansion.
Okay, and that's why this is working well for you.
Well, because now, for example, if I take a store, like let's take the store which is in Guwahati. We have a store in City Center Mall. If that store is growing at more than 20% every year, my staff is not doing any magic. The reality is that the demand for the product is more than what I'm supplying.
Okay.
So then I know I need to add another store.
Okay.
So the real question comes down to how big is that market and how big you're in that market as such.
Okay.
So that's why the cluster-based expansion model works for us.
Works for you.
Because there's the demand is much higher.
Demand and not many other players, organized players in this
Correct.
area.
The other reason why cluster-based expansion model works very well for us is today when we have 50 stores, so Chennai I have 55 stores in one city. Bombay I have close to 70 stores in one city. Now today when a customer sees you in 69 different places, she buys from the 70th place. She automatically sees that Go Colors is there everywhere. It's a brand in her mind. So that's how I replace my advertising by my stores.
Interesting. And also, you have 600 plus stores right now, and you maintain the same price for products across all stores. But out of the 600, roughly 190 odd are placed at airports. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the final margins that you get from an airport store would certainly be lower than a high-end street store.
There are no margins in an airport store.
Exactly. So 190 stores at an airport, is that more a brand building exercise?
We are having these 7-8 stores at airports.
Okay, maybe then.
Yeah, 7-8 stores. So out of the 630 stores we have, about 180 are in malls,
Okay.
7 or 8 in airports, and the balance are high streets.
Okay. So maybe.
But look, coming specifically, you're talking about the airport store. I think
Yeah.
it's the best advertising mileage you can ever
That's
have.
wonderful.
And I feel even if you have to spend a few crores a year on just running the airport store, the mileage and the advertising branding is way higher than spending on digital.
Okay.
So for any brand, if you're looking at an airport store, you need to set aside a marketing budget for running those airport stores.
It's more brand building.
It's more brand building.
Understood. And currently Go Colors is purely a retail brand and all the production activities are outsourced. So do you foresee yourself to backward integrate and start production to reduce maybe dependence on vendors and reduce supply side issues if any?
Not really. I think we are in an outsourced model and we will continue being an outsourced model. For a brand in retail, it's better you don't do manufacturing. Doing manufacturing and retail together are not advisable because they're two different types of expertise. See, I'm from a garment export background. I know the manufacturing thing in and out. I still would want to avoid manufacturing. If you can get a product outsourced and if you have the volumes, you can very well get it at a lower cost than what you would be manufacturing at. If you set up your own factory, you would be bound by your own manufacturing process. Now today let's take Page Industries. Why do they have their own manufacturing? Because the product is complicated to stitch.
Okay.
So when there is a very special expertise you require for manufacturing, then setting up your own manufacturing makes sense.
Okay.
But if it's a simple product to outsource, then outsourcing is right. Cost cannot be the decision making for outsourced versus in-house. It's depending on how complicated the product is, you decide. So in our situation, the product sourcing is not different. So we want to stick to the outsourcing.
So this particular thing, when I was going through your company history, this is something I found very intriguing because you are coming from a manufacturing background, and generally most of the, as you say, Marwadi families who are coming out of manufacturing background, it's difficult to put a hard stop there and just go in retail. So that was a big decision or a big leap up that you took at that time. So what was going on in your mind while taking that kind of a decision?
See, when we were starting Go Colors, our manufacturing business was not doing great. That time I think overall the export business in India was going through a turmoil, so we were losing money. So we knew that if we want to keep growing as a family, we have to do something in retail. And we didn't want to get into manufacturing because we knew the manufacturing was lost. So for us to take that decision and say, look, let's do retail without manufacturing was very easy at that point of time.
Because of the experience that you were having
I was having at that point of time.
Okay, makes sense. And so Go Colors is the first organized player in this niche category of women's bottom wear. And did you find any special advantages because of being the first mover, or was it more like a hurdle that you had to pave the pathway yourself for a lot of things?
See, when we started the brand, this was not even a category.
Exactly.
So I think the biggest difficulty we had was getting spaces for our stores.
Okay.
Today a mall could never give us space. They've never heard of the bottom wear category. They've not heard of Go Colors. Randomly somewhere some person is coming and talking about Go Colors. So we were not a brand. We were existing in a category which was not recognized by anyone. So I think the first 3-4 years was very difficult. I mean, of course, luck played a big role. We did manage to get spaces in some malls, which helped us get further spaces. But the first 3 years was very difficult because when you're in a category which does not exist, how do you convince the other person about it? Okay. So I think that's where the hard work of an entrepreneur kicks in, where creating something out of nothing. And I think the first 3-4 years was very challenging.
And did this particular fact that you are the first player turn into an advantage when you went out to seek funding, maybe for an IPO or a PE? Or
Definitely.
That was definitely an advantage.
Because even today, we don't have a competition second to us.
Right.
And I'm not saying this in an arrogant way, because it's a matter of fact, and also we are also very alert tomorrow when competition is going to be coming. So I think the one thing which happened for us by luck was we identified this category and we grew it very fast before someone else could notice it.
Right.
So when we went IPO, when we went for PE funding, that single player in a large category made a very good difference.
And unorganized to organized market share. Currently, organized has roughly 8%, if I'm not wrong, market share in the women's bottom wear segment. How quickly do you see this growing? Because if I'm not mistaken, in the past couple of years, it is roughly around 8% benchmark only. So do you see it growing further, or?
See, we would want to take it beyond double digits. So right now we are at about 8%.
8%.
See, for us, we are not having a presence in the unorganized, and we don't intend to be there. It's a very good channel for many, but we want to play in the organized play. In the organized play, we are currently about 8%. And I think in the next 3-4 years, we would want to get close to 15% as soon as possible.
Okay. And one more question that I just overheard while I was talking to people: 600 plus self-owned stores. How do you manage it?
I mean, see, look, it looks like a really big number.
It does.
And it is, but I think you have to first crack the model for your first 50 stores.
Okay.
And I think if you crack that model of the first 50 stores, the balance falls. So I'll give you an example.
Copy-paste after that, is it?
See, operations of how do we handle is a very smaller one. I think the bigger risk for an apparel brand like us is that when you're opening so many stores, you can lose a lot of money in just, the store does not work out. So what we did right was, in the first 50 stores, we studied the business very well. We knew what our gross margins were, what kind of EBITDA we were generating at a store level, what were the working capital days of a particular store. I think that model we cracked it very well. And then when we saw on paper that it was such a profitable model, then we extended the 50 to 600.
Okay. So getting the first one.
So when your economics of a store work, the management always takes care. It's not a problem.
Okay.
So getting the economics right of a store is more important than the actual running of the store.
So unit economics was.
Unit economics plays the most important part when you're doing your own store.
My concluding question before I hand it over to the audience for questions. Today, India is the most populated country in the world. According to the income pyramid, its middle class is bulging. Per capita income is expected to rise about 5,000. So all these are indicators for a company like Go Colors to have a very bright future as far as the growth in the market itself is concerned. And on the other hand, the unorganized market is huge. We are currently at 8%, so there is a huge margin for growth here as well. So out of the two, which one excites you more? The more unorganized part or the more growth in the pipeline?
The organized part, definitely. Because actually the consumer is shopping a lot more from organized versus unorganized. And that's a matter of fact.
Okay.
So today, see yourself as a consumer. Maybe 10 years back, you were going to the mom and pop of MBOs in a particular town. Today you're buying a lot online. You're going to more shopping malls. The consumer is moving more towards organized. So we have to go where the consumer is.
So that is more exciting. You see more growth in
Definitely.
that. Very interesting. Before I end the session, I would like to invite questions from the audience.
Just one question. Since you said this segment was non-existent, so how did you come across with this idea?
See, we were in the export business and we wanted to do something in retail. So we spent a lot of time to see what we could do in retail. There was menswear, there was women's wear, there was kids wear. Interestingly, in women's wear, we saw that there was a shift happening in the ladies' attire from saris to a two-piece attire, where the top and the bottom are separate pieces of clothing. And at that point of time, we saw that in the bottom space, there were no organized players. There were many brands who were dealing in top wear, but not in bottom wear. And one of the functional good parts of bottom wear, that it's a core product. See, in top wear, there's a very big risk that it's fashion oriented. Your inventory is at risk. Styles can go out of fashion. In bottom wear, the colors are and products are everlasting. So that's how we selected bottom wear.
Nipul has a question.
Yeah. So actually, I understood that it's very interesting how you're following your marketing pattern of just opening stores, and that's how you're increasing your visibility. But seeing the trend of increasing smartphones to increasing apps and people downloading apps very quickly, knowing how to update them, seeing the visibility online presence. So I just want to know, how do you calculate your sales with, like how she's saying, the unorganized players coming in, hiring influencers, going, not pumping in that much amount that Go Color might be investing, and making sales and taking their
See, I think digital marketing, we are spending X amount of crores a year on digital marketing. And that itself is a good amount of money for us to sustain and grow. What I was trying to say was the percentage will drop because our revenue is increasing. But those budgets are the same. So we are not spending any less. It's just in the P&L it looks as a lower percentage as a calculation of revenue. So our idea is to keep increasing our digital spend. But when you look at it at the end of the year, as a percentage it keeps falling. So we are actually not reducing we are increasing our digital spends. But that is slower than the speed at which our sales are growing. That's why you see a fall.
Because we see, like, interestingly, we see a lot of Terra or any other brand that are coming in this particular segment of like track pants or these where they again drop down and they come with bottom where they're just hiring influencers and they're just going in that kind of a platform. And I believe I don't know how fair.
See, I think influencer marketing is the most powerful tool in the country today, and that is brand building. I was talking about top of the funnel brand building. So for us, 90% of our advertising spends are going in influencer marketing, and jitna you spend, the more you spend is less. So influencer marketing, like very rightly you mentioned, is a very powerful way of getting customers.
Nobody's hiring celebrities nowadays.
It's more influencer, absolutely,
More,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Influences for a local segment which target
Definitely.
those
Yeah,
particular areas.
that is the best for apparel clothing, especially women's wear.
Right.
Influencer marketing is the most effective way of advertising.
Any more questions?
So, while we're talking about 630 stores, right? So, what are the key indicators that you were mentioning? If you can lay more emphasis on that. What are the key indicators of each of the stores? How often do you review them, and are all your stores profitable?
See, for us, more than 90% of our stores are profitable. And I think the real indicator in the business is your gross margins, what you have in the business. See, I think rental cost in India is very high. Staff cost is very high. So how do you make money in a store when rental cost is so high? Your product margin has to be that much higher. So I think the real question comes down to whether you have more than 50% gross margins in the business. If you have more than 50-60% gross margins in the business, you will be able to absorb the rental cost and the staff cost what you're going to be having at store level. And higher the gross margin, higher the store level EBITDA. So I think the real metric for any brand to track is how much do you make on the product. What is your cost of goods sold? And because we are a full price item, we've been able to have that consistency in gross margins right from day one. For fashion brands, some years they discount more, some years they discount less. So their cost, the margin on the product will keep fluctuating, which is not there in our case. So that is one metric. The second metric is what is the working capital days of your particular store. See, if you're running your own store, there are no receivables, it's cash and carry. If you're having inventory at a store level, how many days of inventory are you having at the store level? That is a very, very important metric you need to track. So combination of store level EBITDA and store level working capital days are the two most important metrics.
Gautam, you mentioned that 800 to 1,000 crore would be an ideal entry point for an IPO. So that 800 to 1,000, is that the market cap or the amount raised?
Amount raised.
That makes the market cap at around 5,000 to 10,000 crores.
Very hard to say. It can be anything. It depends on how much you're diluting. How much you're diluting. So I'm guessing if a company is diluting 25% and they're doing it'll be about 4,000 market cap.
So it's basically most of the small or the medium players, it's difficult for them to reach that level, right? I mean,
No, it's not necessary. I mean, look, there are some very, very phenomenal stories who have gone public, who have started the business as a family-run business and grown to that level. So today, there are so many companies in that range of 5,000 crores market cap to 10,000 crores market cap. See, 5,000 to 10,000 crores market cap is a very small market cap in the entire public markets space. No, I'm talking from a public market space. So there are so many businesses which have matured are in that range, and they are businesses which have been built by family entrepreneurs.
Also, what of the PE investors is it necessary that most of them they enter, they exit during the IPO, or they can also continue even after IPO?
They can continue. So for us in our case, our first investors, Sequoia Capital, they sold half of their stake during the IPO and they continue to hold the other half. And our other investors, they exited fully. So it depends. See, even for the PE investor, they see, okay, after the company goes public, if they continue to grow at 30-40% every year, they can get a better upside on their investment. So they continue.
One more thing I wanted to understand. So the stake that the PE investor is selling, that amount is not coming into the company, right? That is going directly to
That is secondary. That's going to the investor directly. So the
that's not
1,000.
coming into the company, right?
So I'll give you an example of our IPO. Our IPO size was 1,000 crores. What came into the company was 130 crores. The balance 870 crores have gone to investors who have sold. So that 870 crores have not come into the company. Only what was a fresh issue inside the company, which was 130 crores, came into the company.
These PE investors, when they come, do they have a specific, approximately, do they give an idea also of what percentage do they need while they invest?
See, that depends. If it's a smaller business, they would ideally want to take 25-30%. If we are talking about a matured business, which is, suppose if you're going to a VC, a venture capitalist would want to take 25-30% because if that story becomes a hit, they'll earn more because of the 30%. A PE investor, because they're coming in much later in the game, for them, their upside is calculated. So they would be okay taking a lower percentage. A VC would ideally want to take larger because they're betting on the entrepreneur. So if that business clicks and owning 25-30%, they can earn a lot of money on what they invest.
Just one more thing, since I think your product does not have a huge or differentiating factor than the other products, what I understand. So, I mean, do you feel that there will be competitions and all which will be coming in from the other?
See, I'll tell you, anything is brandable. The water we drink is brandable. Now, how do you differentiate between a Kinley, Aquafina or anything else? But a person who wants to drink Kinley water drinks Kinley water. So, anything is brandable in the minds of the consumer. As far as you're giving the quality and the pricing, as per what the consumer wants, the consumer will always keep coming back to you. And in our category, because we are a core category, customer loyalty is very high. See, in a fashion category, what happens if you, for example, like Zara. Zara one season has good merchandise, next season they don't have good merchandise, you'll stop buying from Zara, you'll go to H&M or you'll go to any other place. But if you're buying a core product, which is a solid product, you keep buying that brand until there's a problem with the product. So customer loyalty in our business is very high.
One question I had in my mind was during the IPO, one of your key investor, they completely divested.
They completely
Divested.
yeah, correct.
And the other one sold half of their shares. So after you had this divestment, so did you feel the pressure was less?
I mean, look, see, once
in terms of performance and in terms of reporting and
see, if you ask me, I mean, the pressure after getting listed is much more than what it was earlier. Because at the end of the day, there are umpteen number of investors in your company. If they don't see growth levels in your company, they will sell. And the market cap of company is dependent on how buying and selling happens. So the pressure on the CEO or the entrepreneur is far higher in a listed company than a private company. The advantage of transitioning from a private company to a listed company is that you're winning back your company when you're getting listed. Because when you're a private limited company with PE investors, all the preferential rights are with the PE investor. So one advantage of getting into a listed company is that you're winning your company back. But the pressure there does not go away. The pressure in fact actually increases.
actually my question was both, which you answered. Pressure of owning the company, like getting back the company.
Yeah, because when you have a PE investor, the company is not yours. I mean, you're the CEO, you're the MD, it sounds very good, but the reality, the company is not yours. Till you have a PE investor.
Yeah, hi. You spoke about gross margins, you spoke about unit economics. when you started off, I'm sure volumes weren't there. Weren't you tempted, and how did you stop yourself not to get into manufacturing?
See, for us, we didn't have the capital to put in for manufacturing. Second, we had decent kind of volumes to begin with for us to probably get outsourcing done. See, I mean, look, we do our entire sourcing from Tirupur. Tirupur is the knitwear capital of India. So getting lower quantities outsourced in a town like Tirupur was not a big challenge. So for us, we didn't see that big struggle in getting the product manufactured than making it in-house.
It wasn't ever, I mean, yes, as you said, when we are seeing specifically Marwari families, manufacturing that very factory level. So it is a very, I mean, when you start outsourcing to begin with, it's something new, and your family is never always very happy. A factory level is something they like. So when you're coming out of the mindset and you're looking at unit economics, then you always see that cost will reduce when you start manufacturing. It does, obviously, because when you're talking about cost of goods sold.
In fact, it's ulta, I would say. Today, okay, let's take an example. I have that export business still running. Today, if I go to my export business, they will be more expensive to me than the vendor I'm getting it outsourced.
You're talking net, or you're talking about cost of
I'm talking about cost of goods sold. The gross margin what I would make after cost of goods sold, my own company would be more expensive for me.
A lot more efficient.
Because I'll tell you, as a brand or as a retailer, you have the flexibility of shifting from one vendor to the other for a better price without compromising quality. But when it's your own manufacturing, you are bound by your own costs.
Coming from that background was always a temptation.
See, for us it was easier because we were losing money in the export business at that point of time. So for us that was a negative point to begin with.
And capital was an issue.
No, we had family savings, and with that family savings we were able to start the business. So we were able to make it a yearly 45 crore sale business before we raised our first round. From 0 to 45 crores of sale a year, we built it on our own capital, which was sufficient.
So the temptation wasn't there.
The temptation was never there. Even today it's not.
Rather, it sounds more not really wanting to go there.
I mean, I am tempted. I mean, in the journey. So, whenever we're talking manufacturing, because I am running a manufacturing unit, I agree with what you're saying. But at the end of the day, when you're doing unit economics, you're always like, okay,
Let me answer it differently. See, I was answering more from my perspective because of our situation back then.
Okay.
Today, suppose someone is starting a brand and they are having their own manufacturing and they're doing it through their own manufacturing, there's no harm. Maybe it turns out to be cheaper. You can't grow, maybe it turns out to be cheaper.
Yeah.
But if you want to grow as a retail brand significantly, at some point of time in the journey, you'll have to switch to outsourcing. So it depends from case to case basis. Manufacturing can be a initial boost in the beginning, but eventually it has to switch to the outsourcing. Unless you're in a business like innerwear, like Page, example, right? For Page, getting the product outsourced is very difficult. So he has to put up a manufacturing unit. So it depends on the product.
Because you rightly said, most of the products are simple. So there is because that is always there.
Yeah.
You see a larger picture, because growth is not possible having that number. It's not possible. It's impossible rather. If you invest that much on marketing and the expertise again, and specifically for a family business to see both building a brand and setting up a manufacturing unit is not practical.
Correct. So if you already have an existing manufacturing unit, it's a completely different matter. But if you're wanting to set up for retail, I would never advise that.
I think it more comes from you having affinity towards manufacturing because that's what you know, that's what you have already done. And as I mentioned, it was commendable for you to put a full stop there and start something retail which was completely new because that's where a lot of families would struggle because they have been doing manufacturing for maybe generations and that's what they know and just stopping it there. And
retail and manufacturing completely do different things.
Different animals, totally different animals. Yeah, exactly.
And I think after a point, maybe manufacturing becomes a bottleneck. If you have to expand, maybe doing third
100%.
party becomes
100%.
unnecessary.
If you want to grow at 30-40, simple. If you want to grow your sales at 30-40%, your manufacturing has to grow for 30-40%. So, from a balance sheet business perspective, it will be such a capital intensive business for me to grow my manufacturing along with my sales. So my sales is growing 30-40%, my manufacturing has to grow 30-40%.
So for you, do you have just one manufacturing unit or is it spread across the country?
It's across 70-80 suppliers. So we
Okay.
have umpteen number of sellers.
Okay. Okay. And how do you? So that takes care of all the transportation costs countrywide, I would assume.
Yeah, it's all in the cost of goods. So yeah.
And how do you kind of maintain quality? And this is more kind of an operational
See,
question.
we buy our own fabric.
Okay.
And see, because in a garment, the most important point of quality is the fabric. So for us, our sourcing model is as such that we buy our own raw material, we buy our own fabric, we give it to outside factories who convert it from a fabric to a finished fabric.
Okay.
So that's how we maintain it.
Okay. Okay. Questions regarding digital marketing. So you mentioned that you focus only on building your brand, and I think I heard you right. You said 90% is spent on influencer marketing.
Correct.
Okay. So how do you measure the ROI over here? And because is there
You
a way
can't
to
measure
measure
it.
it?
You
You
can't
cannot measure it because
It's
it's
just your gut feeling on how the campaign is gone.
okay.
You will get that gut, whether it's worked or not worked, and whether you want to continue spending or not. But that's how brand building works.
But does it reflect on your sales numbers or does it
It
reflect
will
on the
not
likes?
reflect on your sales number in the short term.
On the likes and
You
the
should not even
page?
expect it to reflect in your sales number.
Okay.
Because the minute you start expecting that your sales will go up, then it's performance and not brand.
Right, right. So in that case, do you look at the reach of that post or that video or
Of course, you have to
likes
measure.
and all those
you
things?
have to measure the post. So suppose today an influencer is putting up the post.
Huh.
How many people it reached? How many people have liked? Has your Instagram following gone up? Those kind of things you measure.
Okay.
But those are limited barometers. At the end of the day, you will have a gut whether the campaign has worked or not.
Okay.
Because it won't directly reflect on your sales and on your revenue. You don't expect that.
You shouldn't
You shouldn't
expect it
expect.
also.
That's not the kind of marketing, digital marketing that
Exactly.
we want to do. I think Nidhi here had a question.
So, I wanted to ask, is there any conscious decision on staying to selling stores and not doing the franchising?
No, so I mean, look, franchising model is a very great model. I think many brands have done it successfully. For us, because the way we have grown and opened more number of stores in larger cities, we've not felt the need of franchising. But now, since we are going to be growing into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, we are going to start franchising. Eventually, tomorrow, suppose we have 1,000 stores or 1,500 stores, 10% of our stores will be franchised, and 90% will be company owned, company owned.
Isn't it easier to have franchising?
But you'll be compromising on margins. See, if your business is having very good superior margins, why do you want to share the margin with another partner? But you have to strike the right balance, right? So you can't say that I will not franchise. So you do it in a limited way where you feel you will not be able to run the outlet efficiently. But just to avoid investment of capital going through a franchise route, if the business margins are good enough, you can do the investment. Like in our stores, when we invest X number of lakhs to put up a store, we are able to recover our money within the first 3 years. So for us, putting up our own EBOs makes a lot of sense. So it comes back to the unit economics.
And along with that, I also think if you're going the franchising model, you are losing the direct contact with the customer to some
Yep,
degree, which
yep.
I think in the
I
long
think
run.
that's a very important point. See, today I'll give you an example. In our product, it's a core product, no print, no embroidery. Today, if the franchisee sees that the margins are so high, he can get an unbranded bottle and keep it at the store level.
Right, and that's
You lose control.
losing
So
space.
very rightly you said, you lose control of the shelf space.
Right. Any more questions?
Was it intentional? Because owning company-owned stores and the number you're talking is not a joke. I mean, you also had 600 company-owned stores. So it was always intentional because a vision of owning 600 plus stores and managing it yourself is, I mean,
See, so I'll tell you. So first we started off in 2010, 2011, we started off the MBO business. So we supplied to a lot of dealers, a lot of distributors. We lost a lot of money in receivables. And we were on the verge of shutting the business in 2011 because whatever sales we had done was stuck in receivables. We had lost a lot of money. Then we thought, okay, why not put up our own outlet? Let's give it a try. It worked very well. Then when we reached to 50 stores, the profitability was amazing. And when the profitability of your own store works out so well, then taking that 50 to 630 is not that difficult. See, you're not owning the real estate. If you're paying rent, so it's at the end of the day, what your investment you're going through is only going to be your interior and your inventory. And if your profitability is supporting that, why not? See, as such, running the 600 stores sounds complicated at the outset, but once you get your first 50 right, from an operations perspective, the 50 to 600 is not a big difficult task.
Has technology played a big part in terms of running 600 stores, and also in terms of what metrics do you check on a day-to-day basis and making decisions on whether to shut down a store or not?
See, we track our stores on a daily basis. So today, one of the most important aspects in our store is that if we are putting up a store, what is the kind of revenues we are doing? Is it as per our average what we want to maintain? Whether the store is profitable or not. The most important thing in our business is same store sales growth. So if there is a store of 2015, is that store still growing every year? Because if you're running a store, your cost of that store is increasing every year, whether it is rent, whether it is staff. If your sales don't increase, your profit margin falls. So the most important metric in our business is same store sales growth, which we have to maintain. So any store which is, whether it is 2015 or whether it is 2018, whether that is continuing to grow even today, so that your margins are intact. So that is a very, apart from profitability, this is a very, very important metric we have on a daily, monthly, quarterly basis. Because cost of a store will always keep rising. You don't have control on that. Whether it is staff salary, whether it is rent, it will always increase. So how do you keep supporting that?
Right. And you personally?
It's applicable for all models.
Sorry?
It's applicable for all models.
Absolutely. 100%. So the advantage in the franchisee business versus the company-owned business is the franchisee takes up the responsibility to grow the sales of the store. So today the franchisee is sitting at the store saying that I will increase the business here. That pressure is off you if you're doing the franchisee business. So that's one advantage of the franchisee business.
In terms of movement, I met the Sagar.
Sagar, yeah.
Yeah. So we had come to one of the schools, so they also don't franchise. So when we asked them, their point was of the quality control because it's in terms of food. So, but then, yeah, like with clothing, it's not that difficult for you to maintain quality you are supplying.
Yeah.
That's why you're able to.
So for us it's easier.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Sagar is very energetic, so I don't, he can win the mood. So,
Yeah, so he was telling us that why he is not franchising because so that's our advantage.
for us, see, in his place, in his line is very difficult because it's food.
Yeah.
It's food and he needs to have that.
Yeah, but for us, it becomes a lot easier.
Then obviously because there are many fast food brands which are franchising very quickly. But then he had stuck to his values and he wanted.
See, in the line of food, franchising is very risky.
Exactly.
Because the recipe, all those things play a very critical role. Which in clothing is far easier.
Making the same impact on the minds of the consumer in the food industry.
Yeah.
You've controlled your RM, so it doesn't matter. So
Sorry?
you have your full control in your raw material. Right?
Absolutely.
So, quality would not be an issue.
Will not be an issue.
Well, I think we are running over time. Thank you so much for your time and the wonderful Q&A. I'm sure everyone here extracted a lot of value from this session. Thank you so much.
High quality, and I told everyone a few months back that for the next few months we'll be focusing on high quality content speakers. So today was one of them. So thank you for that. The second high for today was that we could hear one of our EU members and about their success story, their successful brand story, business story. So I think it's one of the star moments for us, and I just feel grateful that we could have you today here. And we are closing the year. It's April already, and today, tomorrow, we are having two speakers. Both are from EO. Both are, I would say, both have built a brand for themselves. Today you are there, tomorrow is Namika Khanna. And I just feel good about our year closing, and I just hope that people had a great time, listening to you as much as you enjoyed, speaking to us. And anything you want, any support you look forward to Northeast, please do feel free to contact us. Last but not the least, guys, thanks to Anuja for coming down from Calcutta. So now we have another moderator in-house, for any learning event. So Uday, you should please take note of this, and next year we should have Anuja again. I think it was brilliantly done by her. So thank you so much for that. So thanks to our learning team, Sahil and Amit, organizing this. This was our first event we did in the morning, breakfast event. We were not sure if people would turn up, but we are really amazed to see these many numbers coming in the morning, members and spouses. So thank you everyone for coming down. And now we would like to take a group picture. So please come in. Thank you.